All right, we are back. Peanut Gallery, I'm going to have the floor for you.
Yeah,
Go
well,
ahead.
let's get started with this. So let's talk a little bit about championships in the professional wrestling industry. And there seems to be a theme over the past year or so, I mean, maybe even less than a year, depending on the promotion, where they just keep adding fucking titles. Far beyond what we would typically associate with championships. I understand that there is a little bit of growth in terms of the roster sizes, which is fine, but I don't think that the number of championships should be increasing at the rate that it is increasing. And I feel like it ruins a lot of the prestige of what it means to become a champion. You know, if everyone's a champion, then what's the point?
I think it depends on where it is. So in this example, for Strong, they have established roster, and they are introducing women into that roster. They have to fight for something.
But here's the thing, though, is that New Japan Strong is not. A lot of the people who consist of the Strong roster are signed to other companies. So I don't see New Japan Strong as a separate entity or a brand that is apart from.
They are, to me, they are the NXT to New Japan.
But they're not. They're the American version of New Japan. New Japan is trying to compete in America, and this is what they're doing.
Now, is it going to work? No, but they are introducing it.
I know. But it brings up, but again, my point being is that how many titles is too many titles?
I think it's a fair assessment.
So it's just, there's just this proliferation, and I think it's worth mentioning because I think that people are going to start getting title fatigue from this, and especially in New Japan's case, they just introduced their first women's title late last year, and they're already introducing another women's championship. In addition to all of the championships that they are promoting actively with their partnership with Stardom. So it's one of those situations where it's like, well, how many titles can you possibly give in one roster?
I mean, like I said, I understand that, but I think in this context, it is different because the travel from Japan, even still today, is still kind of weird. Because I mean, they're just lifting the mask mandate in stadiums. They're just doing it tomorrow.
My point is that this seems like it is too rushed. You have 4 superstars, only one of which is an actual American superstar that can identify with the audience here, going for a championship, and then what? The IWGP Women's Championship it started off pretty okay, but now it's going into territory of unfamiliarity. Because we had Kairi, we had Mercedes, and now it's, I don't know.
Mayu Iwatani.
Right. And who knows who that person is? I mean, if you're trying to introduce this to an American audience, have superstars that are familiar to an American audience.
Do you think Mercedes should have had the women's champion longer instead of dropping it to Iwatani that quickly?
Yes, she should have. I understand that the contract issues were there, but I think that the New Japan Strong Women's Championship is being introduced at a point in time to where maybe the majority of the audience would not be as familiar with the majority of the people who are going for this championship.
Fair enough.
Because I don't see a lot of people coming from other brands to fight for this championship.
Well, we don't know that yet.
We don't.
Maybe they're over egging the pudding.
Yes, and that's.
But we don't know
right.
Because the women's division within New Japan is still very new.
I know, and see again
I think they only have like 3 people signed.
Right, and again, that is where my concern lies. And now you're introducing a second championship for the women's roster. Like, why?
But they're going to be introducing a bunch of new titles to the Tamashi, which is the Oceanic part of the brand.
Right.
So is that going to be another issue, or is it because it's in a different part of the world that it's actually going to be okay?
It's going to be okay if it's a different part of the world. I think that, well, again, okay, so here's the thing. Strong is an established sub-brand of New Japan Pro Wrestling.
Yeah.
So it makes sense for them to have a strong, they started with the Openweight Championship, and then they moved on to the Tag Team Championship, but the roster is pretty significant for Strong specifically.
I see what you're saying. So if New Japan Strong signed a bunch of women and established a roster with at least 5, then a women's champion to be established is fine. But the thing is that obviously Strong's championships surpass that. They have Impact wrestlers go for and hold them. And I think that's still good because that's still American audiences getting exposed to this.
But see, I think that there's a difference with this women's championship. If you only have 4 viable contenders you're bringing over, only one of whom is actually going to be familiar with American audiences, you should have put more Impacts, you should have put more AEW women in this tournament in order to make it seem like
maybe have an actual tournament. I don't think these women actually competed for this spot viably. I think they were just given together.
It. Yep.
Right.
So that's just one example of where I think New Japan is doing they're going a little gung-ho with championship creation, because they created like 3 or 4 new titles in the last year. I'm just like, how many titles do you need?
Right, yeah, no, they created the KOPW champion.
Yep,
like,
they have the television champion.
I forgot about the television champion.
They have, and then they have the women's champion, the Strong Women's Champion, and IWGP Women's Champion were both created in the last year.
And you still have not brought up the Oceanic side of it, because they have a whole other roster of people over there.
But there are only like 6 or 7 people on that roster
right now.
It
was literally introduced, I think, earlier this month.
Yeah, so they're not introducing titles just yet, but I know that they're probably preparing for that inevitability, which is fine. Again, different roster, different brand, but I don't think that the Strong Women's Championship makes a lot of sense at this point in time.
I can agree with that, but let's talk about
the WWE World Heavyweight Champion. So let's talk about this. Obviously, a lot of people have said that this seems like a consolation prize to the undisputed Universal Championship. The only thing that I can say would make this champion more viable is if you put the World Heavyweight Championship's history onto this belt once it is introduced and separate it away from the WWE Championship. The WWE Universal Championship, number one, should only consist of one belt at this point. If they're just going to merge them, they're just going to merge them. And keep the black strap, obviously, and drop the Universal part of the name. And then they should also give the World Heavyweight Championship lineage to this belt in order to establish its credibility.
Because as of right now, the undisputed the WWE and the Universal Champion are still technically 2 different belts.
Right.
And I agree with you on that, but at the same time, I explained this earlier that WWE has done this already with the Undisputed Champion from 2002 when they reintroduced the World Heavyweight Champion to Raw, where they just gave it to Triple H. At least with this, there was going to be a tournament where the Night of Champions is going to be the first champion.
Right, but in order to establish, like I said, in order to establish its credibility, it should be given that lineage from 2002 to 2011, I think, is when they did the initial merger, right?
Yes.
They should do that.
I think so too.
I don't know if it's going to happen. Like I said, it just feels a little. It feels a little new.
I will say, keep in mind too that the Raw or the WWE Women's Champion, when they reintroduced that belt, did not have the lineage from the old Women's Champion.
No, they did not.
It was a brand new Women's Champion. Same thing with the Cruiserweight. It's not about the history; it's how you present this champion.
Right, but
and
see,
I have confidence that WWE. This was the right call.
Within the context of Roman Reigns, though. It just seems a little, I don't know. It's like
the Roman Reigns one is hard because the WWE champion never stopped.
Right.
They never stopped the WWE. They renamed it, but there was never a champion that surpassed it. This championship retired and is being brought back. It's not about what it was. It's about what it's going to be. And if they put the right people in this tournament to put people, and have the right people go for this title. We said the same thing about the Universal Champion when that was introduced. It was, okay, well, this is a brand new champion. How are they going to do it? And
but
it wasn't off strong.
But it didn't seem like a consolation prize with the fact that Roman Reigns holds both current world champions as it is. It was just a matter of, the roster was split and the WWE champion was assigned to one brand, so we need a world champion for the other brand. In this case, there are already 2 world champions.
Right.
If you want to be technical, there are still 2 world champions.
But
They're being held
Reigns,
by one person.
Yeah, but Reigns has never separately defended these champions since that WrestleMania that he won both of them.
No, but again, they're still counting it as 2 separate titles.
I can see your argument because it's like, okay, well, this is a 3rd world champion within WWE. I feel like, because I don't know when Reigns is coming back, I'm going to assume Night of Champions, unless they drop the Universal Champion on the same night as the finals of the World Heavyweight Champion tournament.
Then
that's ending. Then this entire conversation is moot.
Right.
Because then
I just don't know that they're going to do that though.
Well, if they're introducing this champion, clearly the Universal Champion is one title. It's not by name, but it's clear. It's an unspoken duh.
Right, but again, if they're counting them 2 separate titles, that makes it, okay, that's kind of a third wheel sort of situation.
Right. I have faith that WWE will do it right. They've done this before.
I know, but again, just looking at the context, it's a little concerning.
So, well, hang on. Here's another one. When they did the Undisputed Champion the first time, when they combined the WCW World Heavyweight Champion and the WWF World Heavyweight Champion, were those 2 champions still with 2 different lineages?
No, they were not.
Forward?
They were not.
Because I know
same thing with the merger in 2011 as well. When they did the title unification match, because it was a title unification match, that night the World Heavyweight Championship ceased to exist.
But they
still had the physical belts, but the lineage ceased to exist.
I see.
So in this case, the lineage has not ceased to exist.
Unless they are going to quietly do it out of nowhere. But you can't retroactively do it either.
No.
You have to continue with the reigns until you officially stop it. And I think they're going to do that at Night of Champions.
I hope so, because otherwise it would be kind of awkward to have 3 world titles.
It would. It absolutely would. So let's go into another example of this. But they just went way overboard.
Yeah.
With how they're doing it, and that is the NWA.
Yeah, so let's talk about this. NWA, obviously, their roster is growing, but their championship list is growing, I think, way too quickly.
Well, okay, they brought back the NWA Women's Television Champion. Number 1, I don't even think there was a Women's Television Champion. But also number 2, that is the champion. It's a trophy.
Right, they haven't even made the belt. Right, they haven't even made the belt yet.
Because with the United States Tag Team Champions, they already had 2 different versions of that.
Right.
So they had the original, which was the original United States, and then they had the Detroit version, which was made by Corrigan. But they also have 2 mid champions. They have now this is their 3rd women's champion on the roster,
and their second singles because they have the women's tag team. So you have 2 tag team titles. You have 2.
They have 3 tag team champions.
Yeah,
they have the World Heavyweight, the United States, and the women's.
Right, and then they have 2 singles women's champions. They have 3 lower card non-world title champions in the national, the television, and the light heavyweight,
junior heavyweight,
or whatever. And then you got the heavyweight champion. But while the roster is extensive and they use a lot of independent
which I absolutely love.
Right.
I absolutely love that they do that.
Right. It just seems a little too much.
I agree with you.
And I also, they also defend other belts from other promotions on NWA properties as well. So why have all these championships?
When was the last time that they did that?
I thought they did that at the anniversary show last year. Or not the anniversary show. It was the anniversary show. The show in Nashville, the Asylum. They had like some local tag team champion.
Oh, that's right. The pre-show. Yeah. That was the last time that I saw that. And that was like last year.
Yeah. So, they do that from time to time as well. And I know that they've done it on Power before as well. So.
I think the introduction of the amount of champions is a bit ridiculous, but every time that they actually do that,
it actually makes a little sense.
No, Ryan, Peanut Gallery, there are 4 non-world champion singles.
What's the fourth one?
You have the television, the national, the television. Were you counting the television?
I was counting the television.
Oh, okay, never mind. I don't know where my
3.
brain went.
Yeah. So, anyways, again, there's a little overboard, but I see you have a couple of other pictures as well, a couple of other examples, perhaps.
Oh no. So I only had the 3.
Oh, you only had the 3.
But there are a couple of other rosters that don't do this, and it just came to me, and that's CMLL. Mm-hmm. So CMLL has regional, historic, and national champions. I think right now they have actively like 27 titles, like from all of those, for no reason. Well, I mean, I'm not so familiar with like Lucha Libre and the historicness of this, but it's just about overboard.
It seems like a lot, and I think a lot of it was inherited.
Yes, the NWA historic champions were inherited. I think some of the regionals were inherited from when they did those. But you just don't see them defended. I just don't know what they're doing because really they only wrestle in Arena Mexico and maybe some house shows.
Right, and see, that's the other issue that you come up with too. If you have too many titles, then how do you defend them? Because if every tag team has their own champion, then it's like, what's the point?
Right, well, and even like a roster division that has this, like with tag teams, unless there is a hierarchy of certain tag teams, it doesn't make sense because you have main eventers. Tag teams are their own division, unless you have like a subdivision tag team list, which I've never heard a promotion do ever. It just doesn't make sense.
Right, because then you lose a hierarchy as well.
Right, you lose a hierarchy. When you bring in the United States and the world, you have two world. You have the one that's named World, but which one has better matches? Which one is defended more? Which one feels more important on television?
Right.
Now, NWA is actually fairly good about keeping that structured, where Camille feels like the world champion, and when you go after the world champion, it feels like the world champion,
right?
And at least they keep that hierarchy.
Yeah.
But I see what you're saying. It's like, man, are you just going to give people just
championships?
Consolation champions? Talk about consolation prize here. They don't want to take the title off of Camille, but it's like, well, who can also wrestle? Let's just give them a trophy.
Right. And so, that's
why don't even bother introducing a new championship unless there's a title.
Right. And that's kind of where I'm at. They did the same thing, I think, with the TBS champion as well. But TBS champion is kind of given a life of its own.
Really?
Give it for what it is. I mean, Jade Cargill is doing okay with it. So
she hasn't lost a match, and her matches have been crap.
Yeah. But that aside, when you have a roster and championships, you expect the championship to kind of be in a position where multiple people can go for it. So, another example is the Impact Women's Tag Team Champions. At the time, it was okay because there seemed to be a lot of people, but now the roster is much smaller. So it doesn't seem like there's enough contention to go around. And I feel the same way with the NWA and their women's division. There just isn't enough to go around, and I fear the same thing with the strong women's division. Is there going to be enough people on the roster that are credible enough that look like they can go? Where you can see there is some progression going on.
Right. But we don't know that one yet.
No, we don't. But that is my fear. And that's something I really wanted to bring to people's attention because it is very important.
With the other two examples, I can at least give some credence that there is an established division where people can go for these champions. People can go for the trophy. People will go for this title because there are main eventers on Raw.
Yeah.
And if they're going to keep them exclusive, then obviously the people on Raw can't face Reigns anymore.
So, you know, where do we go from here with all these titles?
I mean, there's going to be a bubble. Something we'll have to give at some point in time. I think WWE right now is structuring it the best. And I just think, I mean, this has always been a complaint about the NWA just bringing in all of these nostalgia champions. Like, no, there was meaning behind these.
Right.
It's like, you have the United States Tag Team Champions. Yeah, but they were not defended with the world. They were like their own separate thing going on because there were territories where it's like, oh, the United States Heavyweight Tag Team Champions are, you know, in California and that area.
Yeah. So that's all I've got for my topic. But what are we doing next week?
So next week we have a double whammy. We're gonna get back to our pay-per-views. It's gonna be Wrestling Dontaku because that show is on Wednesday, which is great. And then we have Backlash. So we're gonna be covering those. We're gonna go back on my soapbox and we'll figure it out from there. So if you did enjoy this video or this podcast, remember to like, follow, leave a rating, subscribe to the channel, follow the channel wherever you're listening or watching this on, become a patron. All the links to everything are either next to me or down below in the description. And as always, be
majestic.